When I was asked to do this, I was under the impression that I would know more about the courts than you would. Well, that's not true, apparently, because all of you know so much already, and I've learned more today. If I just go away now, I have a whole big thing I can add. But I want to say first that I want to thank you for inviting me today, because this has been the best day ever. Hopefully I can give you something new about the courthouses that you can use with your children and their parents. But I want to tell you first that I come from the Contra Costa County Historical Society archives. If you are a member, anybody is a member? Judge Flyer?
I haven't applied, but I
okay, well, you've got your
really
membership.
yes,
and I'm going to tell you why this is so important in a few more minutes, but it is very important. The archives are made up of papers, okay, and we have some artifacts. We don't go out after artifacts. They dwell in the houses of Walnut Creek and Martinez and Brentwood and all the wonderful history houses that we have in this county. What we love and what we live with every day is the same thing the lawyers and judges love and live with every day, which is paper. Everything we do is on paper, but it was done by somebody else. 50, 100, now 164, 165 years ago. Some of these things are. We were founded by lawyers. I don't know if you all know that. You will know the names of which I speak. Absalom Francis Bray, Sr., was the first founder of the Historical Society. His son, A.F. Bray, Jr., came along and continued. So many others. Wakefield Taylor was one of the great lovers of the society. These men, and I mention this, and girls don't take offense, but I mention this because most historical societies are usually created by the women and the women's clubs of a community. Ours is a little different in that it was the legal men of our community who saw the amazing things that were going on and had gone on in Contra Costa County. The awesome story that we've already talked a little bit about here. And if they figured out if they didn't find a way to save it, nobody was going to do it. Now, they were probably wrong. Eventually, somebody would have probably done it. But in 1951, they set up the society. And all of the and then it became a race for Louis Stein to go out and find the history. And he didn't have children, Louis didn't. He had a wife and they had a lovely home. And so he had a little truck. And whenever somebody would notice some documents being thrown away, he would run over in his truck, pick them up, take them to his house. Pretty soon his house was not full of children, but it was full of boxes of history for Contra Costa County. And when Louis reached a really elderly age, lived a very long time, I lived long enough to meet him and know him before he died, and same with the Brays, they got a small historical society. And it was in a little schoolroom next to the library. And they brought all these boxes. Now, I came in 10 years later, and because they needed somebody to help with the computers, and I noticed all the boxes. They were organized well, but they had things on them like box B, box P, and and I thought, well, where's the rest of the alphabet? And they said, oh no, B doesn't mean A, B, C. No, B means it was stored in Louis' bathroom. And Louis had one of those houses that had 2 bathrooms, which made everybody in the neighborhood think he was really crazy, because who needs 2 bathrooms? But since he didn't have extra, and then the others, the spare bedroom, SB, spare bedroom, that's where other things were. The ones in the P were out on his enclosed patio. So that's how they brought him to the History Center. This archives holds now all of the historic books from the Superior Court. For the previous presiding judge, had to make a decision. California made a law several years ago that said anything before 1917 cannot be destroyed by the courts. They can't digitize it and give it to someone. They have to keep the originals. And that was a big problem for Contra Costa County because, if they didn't have somewhere to put it, they could send them to the state. Well, a lot of counties did that. They sent their things to the state. Contra Costa County has never, as far as I can tell, sent anything to the state. Our birth records are in those. They get them, but we keep our copies. And so
they have storage facilities for these places.
Yeah, so
Not
we
necessarily
are,
in county, but
we-
they're all over the place.
we are the stewards now, and we have a huge room that's with ledgers that are bigger than me in some cases, and these things start at 1849 and go forward. The cutoff is around, we have records there in our archives about up to about 1960. The judges have, they're keeping those previous ones because they still come in handy and they're in the library, the law library. But every year, each presiding judge has to decide what to keep and what to send to us, because they've decided now that they will send everything, even if they could destroy it. Now, we may for them digitize it, and eventually we may have to get rid of some of those ledgers, but nothing before 1917. Those will stay forever. And so 70% of this collection is law, and no percent of this membership is lawyers. Maybe one or two. But at one time we had all lawyers, and thank God for them because they gave us so much. And I wanted to send around to you just so you'll see, because I don't have anything else better than what you've already told me. This is how things look in the archives. Okay, this is a genuine case. This one is from 1902, and I grabbed these this morning for one reason, and that is one, I don't know what happens in this case, but this is a murder case. Okay, and this is the People versus William Ryder Powell, who was a doctor, and he's accused of murdering a man named Crandall, who apparently trespassed on his property. So if you see, and you'll see that this is one of the early ones in which we started to have typewriters. So we have typewriters. And then right behind that file was another file, a probate file for William Ryder Powell. 2 years after this case, he dies. Now, I have not finished reading this case to find out, and I kind of didn't want to know if he was found guilty or not. But I know that he had an extensive estate. It's all described in here. And so that everything we have is not just crime. We were talking about crime and civil. We probably have, I would say 40–50% is our disputes between each other. You might be surprised to know that court convened back in the 1850s, 60s, and 70s on Saturdays. And they did that, why? Because we were a farming agricultural county, and farmers don't like to go. And Saturday was market day. So they came to market, they had their drinks at the bar, they all went to court. And they all sued each other. Most of our early cases are Flyer versus Miro. Your horse is trespassed on my land. And that was, I don't like that, and I want some kind of reparation. So we read those, and one of the things that Louis was able to get that does not belong to the courts, but belongs to us exclusively, because they were collected by a private citizen, were these kinds of records. Most of these came, I was told by a lawyer who finally came and looked at ours one day and said, oh no, these aren't the courts, these are from the lawyers. These are the lawyers' files. It might have even been somebody like you.
Well, I mean, court files, I think, usually have to be kept for 25 years.
Yeah.
And then
they toss them.
Then you toss them.
Yeah.
And criminal court files you have to keep longer now because the prior convictions have significance in sentencing. So you may have to keep those longer.
And I can see that. And these, many of them came, if a lawyer closed up or died, Louis would go and collect whatever people would give him. And then some of them, I think, probably did come from behind the courthouse, because they would always call him on the first telephones and say, no, I just saw they put a bunch of boxes behind the courthouse. Maybe you want to go check those out.
I mean, the other thing you have that I think was maybe when the sheriff did it, he was Sheriff Beal, who was a longtime sheriff in Contra, Costa, and I've been over to your place, and it looks like every piece of paper he breathed on, you have.
Thank you, because we have over 100 bankers' boxes of papers from Sheriff Beal. Sheriff Beal was the longest serving sheriff in California, 40 years. He served without a break, and he had to run for re-election every 4 years, and he was re-elected, and started in 1898, and these last term is 1932, and he died in 1934. I'm sure he died because he lost his job.
I mean, some of the things that I don't know if your records ever reflect this, but anecdotally, we used to get prisoners from San Francisco, and we would house them similar to the way San Mateo does. And one of the things that Veal would do, you'd have the bookies and the various underworld people who were doing business, and they would sort of choose among themselves, okay, who's going to be arrested today, and they'd make this arrangement with the cops, and the cops would sentence him to 90 days county jail, and they'd shift them over to Contra Costa County to do their time, and it was Sheriff Veal then who would then, you can't, these are white collar criminals, so he would take them to the Friday night fights.
Yep.
He would really treat them very well, and this is all part of, he got some special compensation for that.
Not only that, but he was one of the first rehabilitators. He had a great belief that young men, especially who'd only been in trouble maybe once or twice, were capable of being rehabilitated. I should come sometime and just talk about him, because it's amazing. But when you think the 100 boxes he kept, and these are personal as well as his job. So he didn't throw anything away, and we have been reading and putting in the computer every single document, every name that's on the document, the date, and we'll never do that again, I guarantee you. It's taking us, well, we did it with these too. It took us 12 years to put all of these in the computer, so that now you can go and just do a search. And we're doing it with Veal, because when we started to look at that collection, and we realized what we had in our hands, which was something that no one in California has ever had, and we're the only ones that have it, we decided that it was worth the time and effort to read every single thing, find every single person's name that ever talked to Veal or wrote to Veal or was involved with Veal. And it is absolutely amazing, because this man was also a politician who chose never to leave his county. He could have been governor of California several times. He was so well known and so popular. He never could bring himself to leave this place. Rick could never leave this place. Never leave this place. Some of us can never leave this place, and you have to ask yourself why. And I ask myself why a lot. But we can't. And it has one of the greatest histories of any of the counties in California. So,
can I ask you just one question about all this? Are these paper records kept in a fireproof storage anywhere?
oh, we're now we just moved into new digs. We're over on Escobar Street, and we're in the old we call it the old sheriff's building, but it's really a beautiful big building. It looks new to me, but I guess it's about 20 years old. And we each room is closed off. You can go in and out of the rooms, but right now we don't have a really good fire system because it's so expensive. And it's expensive because you can never replace the paper. If the paper is gone, it's gone. So what we're doing is we're digitizing as much of the paper as we possibly can every day, and I'll talk about that in a minute, or let Bill talk about it.
I asked because my own grandmother was born in Selma, California, around 76. Well, when she went to get a copy of her birth certificate, back in those days when you married somebody who's not a U.S. citizen, you lost your citizenship. So she,
that's right.
And when she went to reclaim it many years later, she went to go for a birth certificate. Well, the courthouse had burned down with all the records.
Oh yeah.
So,
yeah. Now we don't have any. We don't have birth and death certificates. Those are all kept still by our county clerk, and of course he currently has all that protection.
Well, the U.S. Census showed that she was a child.
Oh, so she was able by other records to track it.
Kathleen mentioned the fact that we do have the naturalization and citizenship.
Yeah,
papers.
we do. We rescued, with the help of the presiding judge at the time, the immigration and naturalization papers for Contra Costa County, which were dwelling in the bottom of one of the basements. And one poor guy, whenever anybody insisted on seeing them, he'd have to go down there, and they were all on the floor in stacks, and he'd have to sit there while the person went and looked for their record. And finally, one day, one of us said, "Where are the naturalization papers?" And this guy was at our place, and he said, "I know where they are." And he helped us, and we said, "Look, those are not being housed properly. They're not. You have to give public access to them." And so now they're in our courtroom.
They date from the 1850 to early 1990.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we can do that. But in any case, one of the things I hope all of you see, you have a little brochure talking about us. I hope that you'll think about becoming a regular member. And there's several reasons. One, we need the $30 a year to help people. We don't get any support. The Superior Court work that we do for them, they don't pay us anything. They don't buy any of the boxes. They don't buy the shelves. We do everything. And I'm working closely with Judge Good right now, who continually insists he has no money, and I believe him. And so I said, but you have 10,000 lawyers in this county. If only 1,000 of them become members, that will be enough for us to take care of your stuff. You know, I mean, we have to take care of it. So these records, we have hundreds of private collections. If you have a great collection and you don't know what to do with it, or you work for a house museum where they have documents but they don't really make them available because they don't have the means to let people study, send them to us. We have the tables and the places for people to research. So just need to understand that a historical society like ours does a great service, but it does more than that because it now takes a place of legal use. And the courts are just probably never in California going to get enough money to do everything on their own. And why should they? I mean, we are all citizens. If we can do something, need an arm or something, why not? So I made a small paperboard for you. And here, and these are the actual photographs from our collection. We have, I don't know, how many photographs, Joe?
Oh, about 20,000.
20,000 that have been entered so far.
That digitized. There's some that have not been
The
digitized.
first courthouse you see up there, relatively small, but you see a nice shop in the hills. This is the first one. It didn't get started till 1856. It took a while for the people to decide on building a courthouse.
After your talk, you should mention that after your talk, it's hard to see from
Yeah,
from
if
this.
you can't see, we walk up here and look at it.
We invite you please to come up and look
Yeah.
at the old photographs
And here,
and with all the
this
notes.
is this small, and then here it is in all their glory. This is courthouse number 1. And if you come here, you'll see it's got a lovely park around it. There's pathways for the lawyers to walk so they can think this is how they walk. Okay, so that they do that. And I wish they would have had one on in there doing that. And then you'll see up here what almost looks like a little lighthouse. And no one, we can't decide to call it a dome or a cupola. I call it a cupola because it's, but and inside there, it's really a belfry. This is a belfry, has a bell in it. And,
Anyway,
right? No? Did I get that wrong?
yeah.
Or did I get that right? Okay. So there's no bell in the first one. it's
There's
the
a
second.
bell, but the cupola is something different.
Okay, well, the belfry, oh, that's right, I'm sorry, this is a belfry. I'm on the next one, that's right. So then the belfry, in time, when eventually we bring this one down and we build this one, because of the earthquake in 1868, people decided this was not a safe route, but it then took them another, I don't know how many years, lots of years, to build this courthouse, which is the one we now call the finance building. Sits on the corner, beautiful, and it had this beautiful dome cupola on it.
And they took that off because of the earthquake?
They took it off because they were afraid that a future earthquake,
Continue to talk.
yeah, would cause a problem. And so they then they hired a guy to come and remove it, and he found when he went to remove it, found that it was very sound and was not going to be a problem.
Perfectly safe.
Perfectly safe, but he'd already been paid. So he went ahead and took it off. So it went away.
So
And
that's, I thought there were,
now there's more.
well, no, I know that, but I thought that was the third courthouse.
No, this is the first one. Well, okay, I'll back up one.
Why don't you read the
Yeah,
your
well,
talk.
while they were waiting to build a courthouse, okay? Let's talk about the first courthouse, because that's true. The first public building in Martinez was a jail, okay? And its location is uncertain, but here's how it's described. It's described that it was built on the west bank of Alhambra Creek, at the bridge on the street, leading back from the wharf. So, we're still trying to find that, but that was the first jail, and there was no courthouse yet. A temporary courthouse was housed in a building at the end of Escobar Street, and the building was used as a church, as a Masonic lodge, and a schoolhouse, and then it also ran trials. The first murder trial in Contra Costa County was Wempet, the people versus Wempet and Wampet. And we have this in our original files. Okay, we actually have the papers. It took place in 1850. And Wempet and Wampet were two Indians, a brother and sister, who had murdered someone. They were tried by a jury, and I guess we can say a jury of their peers, but not really.
American citizens.
Yes.
No.
And they were found guilty of manslaughter rather than murder. And evidently the judge was sympathetic to these two young people, because his sentence was this: a $1 fine and 2 weeks in jail. Now, I love murders, and I'm working on a murder book in Contra Costa County. Okay, I call this one of those murders in which he needn't kill it.
Public service killing.
Yeah, it's a public service killing. Now, and I find them all through our records. You'd be surprised how many people got off easy. And then you start to look into the person that they killed, and you realize this was a community good they were doing. Okay, so and at about that time, only 2,800 people lived in this county, approximately. The first legal execution didn't come till 1852, and we didn't have a scaffold, so they used a Martinez sycamore tree to hang this poor soul.
Tom Dooley revisited.
Yeah. And over the years, we saw many murders, as we still do. And the most infamous probably being the John Marsh murder. Due to political infighting, though, the building a permanent courthouse was delayed until 1854. And then L.R. Townsend was the architect, and the contractors were Childers and Shipman, and they won the bid for $27,000. Not bad.
Multiply it by about 20, and
Yeah.
that will give you the idea.
For today, yeah.
Maybe just go around, we can get.
Around 1854, you see that picture showing the construction in progress. Soon it was surrounded by that beautiful park. But the jail was in the basement. And everybody involved says that the basement was a leaky jail. It was a sieve, that's all I can say. And in fact, the most famous person who escaped from it was one of the murderers of John Marsh, and he was then out and free for 10 more years before we hunted him down and brought him to trial.
Thank you.
We didn't know what. He actually eventually brought out. Long story. One of those overnight governors, tonight I'm the last night of governor, I know to set people free.
Yep.
Yeah. In 1868, we had an earthquake. That scared people. It was bad. 2 of the walls were brought down. The court sessions had to be held in a carpenter's shop after that for a while. Repairs were being made. A jail was constructed in Antioch to hold the prisoners. And even after extensive repairs, the courthouse still was not considered safe by the people. But in 1875, they added an annex to the,
You can see it on
and
that.
you can see it on here. And this is the jail. It's really an annex. You see, it's built to the same Vermont granite as the second courthouse. And it's
Well, that's the jail still there.
and that jail is still there.
Here's the, on the old courthouse, here's the annex that was,
Yeah.
that was built.
Behind there, back there, yeah. So over the years, numerous grand juries condemned the old courthouse as being unsafe, and by 1899, plans to demolish it were building and build a larger and, of course, grander structure. But the first estimates for that courthouse were $100,000, and they were totally unrealistic. The architects were Haven and Tofke, and they came from Sacramento. They drew up the plans for a Greco-Roman classic building. The Pacific Construction Company bid $177,800 some dollars, and that was accepted in 1901. You spent a long time thinking about this, right? And the cornerstone was laid then in December 1901, but they didn't have enough money. So they, in August of 1902, they had to have a special election to increase the county's bonded indebtedness, and they put another $71,000 into that building, and $20,000 for the jail, and another $70,000 for furnishings. All the offices enjoyed Oriental rugs and mission furniture.
Wow.
So some things never change. In March, the supervisors were moved in, and they had a celebration, had a big parade, and that was held in May, and it featured county bands and fire departments and lodges and school children and all the things that come with the Martinez Parade, which still happens today. I'm happy to say, even though I don't live there, I've walked out the door of the History Center many times to watch the Little League pass by and to watch the Halloween parade, and we still do it all the time. The jailhouse was well built, and it was made of beautiful Vermont granite. And the architects for that were William Moser and Sons. Another part of the courthouse was the large dome or cupola that topped the building. It was intended to give the courthouse the appearance of a Capitol building. It did a pretty good job of that, I think, if you look at it closely. However, in 1954, the supervisor worried again about earthquakes. And they were worried that the cupola would come down, and that's what story I told you earlier, so they decided to have it taken off. In 1956, they removed it and found that it was sturdy and well constructed, but they still had to pay the guy, and he still took it down. The next courthouse is the one in the center, which is we call the Hall of Records, and also a courthouse. It was originally built just to be a Hall of Records, but in time they needed more space, so they also added courts to it. And now it pretty much just does court things, and we have a new, more modern Hall of Records. The population growth we experienced here in the First World War made a new building necessary, and it claimed that this was built on a pay-as-you-go, so that was a unique idea for government. The project was free of debt when it was completed, or so they claimed. And that three-story structure is 8,000 feet of floor space, and the square six Doric columns rest on an 18-foot pentagonal basis. And R.R. Arnold, the county engineer, supervised this construction. So we're now bringing some of it home.
You probably know this, but it was built 3 stories. It's now 4 stories.
Yeah.
And there was a 4th story that was added, and one of the stories when it came about, the DA's office was on the 4th floor, and we had this one building that was sort of below us, and it was the jury room, and the jury room used to have a skylight. And at least the rumor was that attorneys, after they had their cases out, they would go down to Department 1 where there's a fully stocked bar. You'd get a drink, and you'd go up on the roof, and you take your drink, and you listen in to the jury deliberating that case.
Oh my gosh.
Which is totally illegal, but they were doing this. And that practice continued because it was a skylight, and they could do that. And one day, lawyers being lawyers, overindulged, and he fell in and he broke through the skylight.
Well, that's a story I haven't
Oh,
heard.
we gotta have that story, yeah.
Then when
We
they
don't
built
have
the
that.
4th story, that practice eliminated. But one of my first offices in the DA's office was that jury room where you actually are on the 3rd floor and you have to go downstairs
Oh,
into this.
Well, that's a great story.
Yeah,
That's a great one.
Wow.
That's the thing we
That's a
live
new
by.
one, yeah.
People think, history is boring, but no, how boring is that?
Wow.
So that's really good to know. Yeah, I just realized that. And then
This
those
story, even if
buildings,
it's totally fiction, but that's what I was told when I
Yeah,
first
well,
came to the county.
you know the lawyers, do you
Yeah.
believe what I believe?
Yes, absolutely.
So from 1902 up until 1987, we were happy. We didn't have any more courthouses. And when you walk up and look at this one you'll see, where you see all this what looks like rubble, this is the original first courthouse. This is the white granite from Vermont that's been dumped here by the railroad train. And then it's going to be shaped into all the bricks. So they still were using this one as they started to build this one. So that's why I put this picture here for you. And then our latest courthouse, and the one that if you go to jury duty, like apparently I do every 6 months for some reason, they have something against me, then you're going to be probably in the A.F. Bray, the building, which is named after A.F. Bray Sr. Incidentally, now I see on the here we are. I think it's on this one, it's now Wakefield Taylor.
It's Whitney,
Yeah.
Justice
You
Taylor
all know
building.
Wakefield, did you all?
And Kathleen, that isn't the latest courthouse either. The one on the far right is not the latest courthouse.
The-
Because you have Spinetta, which came after,
Family law.
and then there's family law, and you also have the.
Was that
building-
in Martinez?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's right
right
behind,
behind.
it's right behind the Taylor building. And you also have the brand new courthouse out in Pittsburgh.
In Pittsburgh, see, I
Yeah.
know, and we talked about, I mean, you know, especially since right now we're trying to get a show, you know, get a thing for Richard Arneson, trying to have
Oh,
a
great.
display out there for
Yeah.
him, you know. I did not know about the two smaller ones, and I'm not sure do they qualify as complete courthouses or just as annexes?
Well, they.
Excess.
See, the difference is they have family, they used to have family law out there when they were fully staffed. And normally that only happens with the Superior Court rather than a limited jurisdiction Superior
Well,
Court.
according to Very Good, right now, most of
I
the,
think they might misdemeanor
let's
jurisdiction.
see, most of the juvenile and family courts are being held in these two. Criminal courts
family
are
is-
being held in
Yeah.
Bray.
Family's all in the Spinetta building, which is
Yeah.
the new one
Okay.
behind.
Okay, I
Yeah.
need to write that down.
And,
Okay.
and civil is held in the Taylor building. So it's juvenile and all civil is in the Taylor building.
Taylor, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's what, okay, that,
And,
I'll have
and
to
all
talk to
all
Gary about
criminals
that.
then held in the Bury building.
So it turns out that we're pretty law-abiding people because we keep building courthouses. I mean, really, think about it for a minute, you know?
Well, I think it's the other way.
Other way around.
Yeah.
More courthouses, there's more crime.
Well,
Well,
really
yeah,
are.
I don't think that, really don't think courthouses actually bring the crime. But, you know, for 160 years, almost, the citizens of this county have been honored the rule of law and the rights of, that protect us all. I think you should tell your visitors, as young as they all are, I gather, although they have parents, about the courts and the men and women who prepared them for us. Because those are the people today that we revere at the Historical Society. Your turn will come, all of you. But right now, you're not history, you're just making history. And I think that I need to tell you also about the bell. And when they finally took the bell down, they put it in the rotunda of the new courthouse. And that was done by Richard Veal. Somebody wanted to melt that bell down. The bell came around the horn. It was made specifically for us. And it was used to ring the bell to tell people that there'd been a jury decision. It was rung if there was a fire. What was the third?
Opening of court session.
And the opening of the court session. So it served a purpose, and the people knew the sound of those bells.
And there were a lot of fires in Martinez.
Yeah, there were a lot of fires, and so when they were going to take it away, Veal just had a fit and said, no, you're not going to do that. So we talked to them, and they put it in the rotunda, and then when they no longer wanted it there, it's now in the little house, the Martinez Historical Society house. Yes. So it's still with us. We still have that bell. So it's a marvelous part of our background. These are the things that deal with buildings. I hesitated in the beginning about this talk, although I'm so glad I came. I learned more from you guys than you learned from me. And that is that the human things that go on in these buildings. And you see it every day when you take your kids. And I would like to put in a bid that someday you offer a just grown-ups trip, because I know lots of grown-ups that would love to have that tour, the same tour you're giving to your kids. I think that the understanding of how these buildings, another thing that I find very interesting, because we visit lots of places and we travel a lot, and all of that sits in 4 blocks and has never moved. It has always been there from the very beginning. From 1850 till now, the people of Contra Costa County have always come to that 4 blocks when they needed to have some kind of help from the court, or if they were bad, they didn't want the help from the court. But that 4 blocks, which they used to call the courthouse square, that terminology has kind of been lost. But I would kind of like to see it come back, because I think it's a good description of what we have there. And now we are forced to build courts in other places, like we have one in Pittsburgh, we have one in Concord, small, and I don't know what
No,
happened to
actually,
Walnut. What happened to the Walnut Creek?
Walnut Creek is still here.
Does it-
Concord,
does
they
it-
actually closed the
They did,
Concord.
okay, so I got them back, so
Yeah.
Walnut Creek is still
Still
on,
there.
and they mostly
Burned
have
down.
traffic
Oh,
things there, like, yeah, they'll have
And
traffic.
the
And then
original
Richmond.
Concord courthouse burned down.
Oh, that's
because
right.
Oh, that's
An arson burned the courthouse down. The reason why the Spinetta building was built, part of the reason is we were able to get insurance money from the burning of the Concord court, and they were able to use some of that money
Yeah.
for.
And then there's a court in Richmond, there's a courthouse,
Oh, yes.
although they're closing down the older one. And all the Richmond books are coming to us. And, or at least a whole bunch of Richmond
You mean
books.
on 37th Avenue,
Yeah.
closing down?
Yeah, the one where they also had some hospital things in there, and they were about to close it up last March. They were emptying, looking at each room, and they opened the room, and it was full of villagers.
That's right.
So they called the presiding
Mrs.
judge,
Regalia's
he
husband
said,
tried that case.
call the
I'm
Historical
sorry, which
Society.
The one
You know
against
what?
Concord,
About 80% of
Contra
them
Costa
were
County
juvenile.
for the value
We'll
of
never be able to
the
share
land
them. We'll just have to
underneath the
store them.
courthouse
Oh,
in
okay.
Concord.
Oh, okay. I
Your
know
husband
he's involved.
represented the county.
Okay, yeah, I
I'm
know
gonna
he's
send,
involved
I'm
in.
gonna send this around too, because there's more, some more pictures you might want to,
I have a comment,
Yeah.
I'm interested, the Wakefield Taylor building, that was also part of the WPA project, 1933. My father-in-law helped to put the bricks on that.
oh, really?
On the steps, yes, he
wow.
was.
Now, there was, the supervisors at the time, when they let the contract out, said that they wanted all local, because we were in the middle of the Depression, all
Yes,
local labor would be local people.
Yes,
The other thing that is, I didn't know about the WPA for that courthouse, but
Well, I'm saying
across,
it's one of those
yeah,
programs.
across the street is the Martinez
Yes.
post office. And if you look on, there's a mural there that's equivalent to the murals that are in Coit Tower. They're also put up by the WPA workers and artisans who did that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what we said
And,
first. I
yeah,
called
you
it
know
the
that
first
Richard
one.
Arneson is quite elderly now.
He's in his 90s.
He's 92 and still as much of a recluse as he might have been. But still very interested, and we're looking at a lot of his papers now. And that through the help of Very Good, who's very anxious that we do something to recognize this amazing man. But I look around and I see you guys, and I see all sorts of amazing judges. I mean, I haven't been in front of a female judge yet, but I've been, I think we have amazing judges. I think we're a county that's overlooked too often, for what reason, I don't know. At one time in the late 1800s, we were a linchpin county in California, and mainly because of the three rivers, because rivers were our freeways. And now that most people don't need a river to get any place, they forget all the values and all the necessaries that we have here in Contra Costa County, except obviously for people here who can't leave, and those neighbors you have that can't leave. So what I would like to do is invite all of you, whenever you have a chance, to come over to the Historical Society archives. It's open on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 9 to 4. I'll give you the grand tour. I'm always there on Wednesday. Bill's always there on Wednesday. And look at what we have and think about, and I have a couple people in mind already. We have at least 1,000 stories in that history center that should be written. Fascinating, unbelievable stories. But we don't have enough people to write them up. Go to our website, cocohistory.com, and read the essays that we do have. Bill's written a bunch of them. Judge Bray, Sr., had a radio program every Sunday, and he wrote dozens and dozens of wonderful legal papers on different laws and things that were going on in California. And so read some of those, and think about if you're a person who likes to write, if you like to write a novel, or you'd like to write biographies, or you're just nosy, that you can come and look at these papers and read the words these people are saying. I don't have time to do it all. We all write as much as we can, but we're a small group, and I know out there that there are people who are great writers, and lawyers especially, and judges make great writers, because they spend so much time doing that it comes right off their pen without trouble. So come and visit us, take a membership card, and at least send us. We get no support other than from members. And we don't get any support from the county or from any of the cities that we save all the cities' history, yeah.
Well, I have a thought for you. You mentioned adults ought to go. And believe me, the people who get the most out of these tours that we give are the adults.
Yeah, the parents like that.
And the parents. And sometimes you have to kind of sit on them to let the kids participate. They're so anxious. And I had suggested this years ago when it was the Law League running the tours, that it would be something we might do and raise a little money. Unless it'd be illegal, could we give a tour of a public building like this and have money raised for the historical?
See, that would be great, even if you got $5 a head, right, each time, just,
Well,
you know.
I mean, it's a thought.
It's
I
a
don't know
thought,
whether
yeah.
it
I think
is
some of the things
legal.
we've done is like when they have some of these bar auctions, one of the things, there was an item in the auction was a complete guided tour of the court and much afterward. And
Yeah.
how we did on that.
That, I
But
mean, that we
money then
could,
went to the bar association.
well, actually, that would have gone to one of the legal nonprofits,
And let me
yeah.
ask those of you who are lawyers and judges, remember, you're the future history. So remember us when you're starting to go through your papers and thinking your kids won't want them, and you're right. They will throw them away into a garage sale, or but the minute you're gone. So it's just this is the way it works. We'll take them, and we'll protect them, and we'll make sure that they get used and that they're seen, and we have to keep building more history for the future. We can't just live in the 1850s forever. You know, we have, so if you have papers of your own, or even some artifacts, and I have to tell you this because we just came back from Barry Good's office a couple days ago. One of the things he wants us to take, and we are going to take, and even though we don't take a lot of artifacts, are the gavels from Richard Arneson. Have you ever seen those? Okay, one of them is 5 feet tall.
Oh my
It's
God.
taller than me, and it's this big around. It would take 3 men to make this gavel. It's beautiful. Oh my God, the work on it, the carpentry on it, it's absolutely gorgeous. And then there's another one that's only like this big. Okay, so that's pretty good. And then there's a regular gavel. And then there's a little wooden, looks like a little bell.
Paperweight.
It's like a
Yeah,
paper,
yeah.
and when you bang that on a table, it sounds as loud. And that was his first gavel. It was just a little round, like this.
Out of law school.
Yeah, actually, he got it, yeah, probably as a gift out of law school. And so those things will be at the center. We're gonna do, if we can't get we need a glass case. There's no money for the court to buy one. I think if they went to a jeweler, any of those old jewelers in Pittsburgh, I bet you they got glass cases in their basements up in the wazoo, and borrow one so that Good can have his wish to put a nice display out to honor Arneson, who was a remarkable cleric, and one of those people that we should be proud to have. He was in the Angela Davis thing, he was in the Betsy DeLuca thing. I mean, he was one of those lawyers and then judges who lived every day, every hour for the law. And we, just like Sheriff Veal lived every hour, every day for the law in his way, and went through 5 wives, because if you're never home.
War around.
Well, there might, yeah, and there might be 6, there's one we keep hearing about, but we haven't proved
Was
her.
Judge Arneson assigned to the Peterson case? And they
Somebody else
challenged
asked.
him.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Somebody else asked that just the other day, and even Good said, I think he had maybe a part of it, but he wasn't even sure. It shows how fast things go
The
by.
prosecution challenged him.
Yeah,
Because they
yeah.
didn't particularly care for how he did the Angela Davis case.
Because he was a very fair judge.
He
Nobody
was,
wants a
yeah.
fair judge.
Yeah. And all the things I read say that he was a fair judge,
Yeah.
but that doesn't always mean it makes everybody happy, right? When they're fair.
That is correct.
It's so hard to
The
say.
losing party is never happy.
Yeah, no, it was interesting. So, I really appreciate you having us here. I am astounded at what I've heard.
Sacramento bound train to get on it at the Richmond station. They'd all be there. They'd be talking about their cases. Court would not begin until the train arrived. The train would arrive like at 8:30, 9 o'clock. They'd get off the train at the train station. They'd walk over to the courthouse. So you're ringing the bell, sort of. Maybe that's how they knew that the court was starting. They would be talking about their cases. A lot of times they would resolve their cases on the train trip and just put the settlement on the record when they got there.
Wow.
Those things that you showed us about the court case, that is in front of a just piece.
Yeah.
It's a preliminary examination.
Yeah, and,
So it's the examination that precedes a trial.
and that's what's interesting about, I'd like you to look at this collection, I'd like to let the lawyer look at it, because it's a mismatch of all kinds of things like that. Some of them are actual trials, especially the murder trials with the testimony and everything. Oh, but they never had a verdict.
Well, I mean.
But now I know I can
Yeah,
go to my.
that wouldn't be a verdict, that
Yeah.
all that happened at the end of that would be a holding money.
But I think I can I can go now to the Superior Court records we have now and find the
Yeah,
verdicts.
especially if you have a document.
Yeah, see, so I'm gonna start doing that this year and see